Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Pro Soccer Talk. I'm your host, Joe Prince-Wright, and as you can see, I'm joined by Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York, and Andy Edwards in Kansas City, two superb riders over at PST alongside myself. Gents, the international break has seemed long as always, but plenty to talk about. There's no shortage of news throughout the US national team, how England are doing, Nations League. We've had a bit of everything, haven't we? So, Nick, what did you enjoy of the international break, mate? What caught your eye?
I wish it was anything other than the United States. I wish it wasn't obvious, the U.S. being back. I loved watching them play. And honestly, it helped also some of the other, things that you might not usually pay attention to, like AFCON qualifying, seeing Mane and Mahrez score wonderful goals to put their teams into the tournament. I thought it was a great international break. This is the shortest one I've felt in a while.
That's always good. That's always good.
Yeah. Andy,
you concur with that?
Yeah, do you think those two things are related, the best and the shortest international break? I would guess so. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky time of the calendar year and the season and everything as well. So the fact that it seems, other than a handful of players testing positive for COVID, everybody's come through uninjured and healthy, and I think that's about the only thing you can hope for in the November international break is no injuries that are going to affect the season, save for, I guess, the one big one at Liverpool, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, it's kind of up and down for some clubs, but overall, pretty good international break. And now we're looking forward to the Premier League coming back and not having another international break until March for the most part. So it's kind of full steam ahead, isn't it, from this week on for Premier League and domestic action. So if you're new to Pro Soccer Talk, Andy, Nick, and I grab a beer, we have a chat. So cheers to everyone for watching. And this week, we're going to start by discussing some of the comments in the last episode because on the YouTube comments, we look at them, guys. We are all seeing, all hearing here. And I was likened to Nick Foles for my appearance, a quarterback. I don't even know which team he's on now. You're going to have to tell me which team he's on now because I remember him at the Eagles, but
Bears.
Chicago Bears, yeah.
Okay, yes, the Bears. I know them well. And Andy was likened to Mitch Trubisky, which is we think is a little bit out there. We can't really see that, but we appreciate the comment nonetheless. And Nick, there was no quarterback comparison for you, but is there someone you want to chuck out that you feel like you look like? Lovely new haircut, to be honest.
Well, thank you. Yeah, pre-haircut, I would have gone with Ryan Fitzpatrick, my old pal, and Buffalo's favorite bearded wonder, even though he's in Miami. Now, maybe I don't know, Brett Favre. I once got that in a bar, but I just think that lovely person liked me.
Here, let me do you one good one and one maybe not so good one.
Right.
I'll give you Matt Ryan with the new haircut. Tall face, kind of similar facial structure. And if you throw on a hat backwards, I could see Matt Stafford as well.
Oh, yeah, he looks like you guys know Jason Isbell, the wonderful country singer. That's my Matt Stafford. I can tell you this was once a gift to me. I do have Matty Ice in my house. Yeah.
Well, I mean, switching from one football to the other football, I usually get shouts of Harry Kane, or if I'm going to use a prop, I put my glasses on, a younger Jurgen Klopp. That's what I've got in some of the comments before. So,
you need to thicken this up just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Maybe a few more grey hairs, but, got a few more years to catch up on Jurgen there. So, yeah, let's focus now from American football to the American national team. Of course, the US men's national team were in action, finally, as we said. Thank goodness. The first time this group of players have gotten together for a year, pretty much. A European-heavy squad. Did really well to draw against Wales in Swansea, and they went to Austria and absolutely battered Panama. Had a really good sort of positive vibes flowing throughout Greg Berhalter's side. A lot of teenage players coming through. Yunus Musa, Gio Reyna, absolute superstars in the making. Then we have Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams locking down midfield. Few issues maybe defensively to figure out and that number 9 position up top. But lads, I mean, what were your general thoughts about this camp? I mean, Andy, I know you particularly enjoyed watching the US come back. So overall, positive vibes coming from the US men's national team side?
Yeah, I don't think you could watch the two games and the performances and not feel positive or excited, I guess, about the national team for the first time in quite a long time. I mean, you might go all the way back to the group stage of the 2014 World Cup, the last time they were in a World Cup and they were progressing in a competition that really, truly mattered. I would say that's probably it. But I think the biggest takeaway from these two games was what happened kind of in between the two games. The performance against Wales was solid, but it lacked a lot. It lacked anything in terms of cohesive attacking play, creativity, chances. There were no chances. I think the two teams combined for 7 shots between them, 7 or 9, one of the two. It's just a really poor attacking game. Now the possession.
One for the US. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, there you go. The
One
possession between the two teams, from the U.S. was very good in that game. They were very comfortable on the ball, but they lacked kind of a forward drive, a killer instinct of any kind. Without Christian Pulisic on the field, and so the growth between the Wales game to the Panama game was the biggest thing for me, because they came out with 7, I think, of the same 11 players that started the first game. And they looked completely different. They had a completely different mindset. They were aggressive. They were looking to drive the ball forward. They had multiple players, Yunus Musah and Weston McKennie being the two main ones, who were looking to really attack and go one-on-one against defenders. And that was completely missing in the first game. They didn't have a true center forward. Sebastian Lletget was a false 9. Nobody was looking to make runs. Everybody wanted to pass. Nobody wanted to be the one to do it. They wanted to defer to someone else. And then suddenly, it was clearly communicated to them that was an issue in the first game, and it changed in the second. Something went bad. They talked about it. They made an adjustment, and they fixed it from one game to the next. That's how a team works. And so I think we actually have a coach who's capable of that.
That's good. That's very positive. And I think these young players, Nick, before I ask you about how good they can be when we focus on some of the big players at big teams now across Europe, I put a tweet out there, the starting lineup for the game against Wales. The goalkeeper, Man City. That's the club he plays for. Dest, Barcelona. 2 centre-backs, Anderlecht and Wolfsburg. Left-back from Fulham. Midfielders from Leipzig, Juventus, Borussia Dortmund, Valencia. And a winger from Barcelona and a striker from the LA Galaxy. So one of those isn't quite like the others. But it does show you that these young players are developing at some of the biggest clubs in the world. It's going very well. Maybe some of them aren't quite getting all the game time they want right now, but we can see technically, right, Nick, that these players are extremely gifted, and it's something quite different that the US has had in previous cycles, to have all of these players at the same time at these massive clubs in Europe. So my question to you, Nick Mendola, is how good can these guys be? Reina, Musah, Dest. I mean, obviously Pulisic didn't play, but that core group, can this be the best US men's national team ever, or are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit?
I mean, it can be. The potential is there. There's a lot of ways to go before that. Pulisic has to keep being Clint Dempsey, essentially, in terms of talismanic status. Dempsey is the best, in my opinion, with all respect to Donovan, the best attacking player in history for the U.S. Here's my thing, and don't forget that Sebastian Lletget was with West Ham well into his 20s, so his development started overseas as well. I look at a guy a little bit older, but still young, in Weston McKennie, and what's happened since he went to Juventus. And there were some worries there. And, I think a lot of us were concerned. He looks, again, understand the competition. He looks elevated. He looks like a guy who went out there and said, this can be my team. I'm confident as heck. Let's get almost to the point where I liked this. I hated the foul that probably should have been a red card, but that game was dicey. It was CONCACAF-y. And I felt like he said, I'm the leader out here, and I'm going to break someone off and try and set this game straight for the U.S. side. So I look at him at in his early 20s. I don't want to guess. I think he's 22.
22, yeah.
22. I look at McKennie, and I think to myself, here's a guy who's already a leader then. And he mentioned in the press conference before the game that he could be a bridge between Brooks and Ream and the teenagers, that he can be kind of an age bridge there. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So what does that mean for Reina and Musah and Dest? It means they might see a guy who's around their age buy in a little quicker. And with Musah, that's going to be really, really important, because holy cow, did he look good.
Absolutely incredible. And as I drink my pint of CONCACAF here, that's what I'm now christening this, Nick, because that's a wonderful term. And if someone hasn't made that beer yet, they need to.
It's an IPA. Pretty bitter.
My main point about this was, and this is something Andy flagged to us, and Reggie Cannon spoke about it before, in between the games. And he was brilliant, by the way, after his move from Dallas to Boa Vista in Portugal. really kind of give Bill Harter a dilemma there at right back. He was incredibly strong on urging other young MLS Academy products to head to Europe, no matter where it was, and won the top leagues, get minutes under your belt, push yourself to that next level. And I've written something on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com about the age-old MLS versus Europe debate. Where's the best place for players to develop? And there is no right answer, of course. It's kind of dependent on the players themselves. I do think there is a right answer, and I think Jurgen Klinsmann's somewhere smiling, probably in his helicopter over Southern California somewhere, just smiling fondly as he remembers all the hard work he did to get these young players into European academies and push them in that direction. But I think that what Reggie Cannon is kind of underlined is that there is that feeling again, I think from Greg Berhalter. I mean, we're all in his press conferences over the international break, and he was asked about the Champions League players and how many, there's a record 10 US men's national team players now in Champions League squads this season. And he said that any national team is judged by how many players they have playing regularly in the Champions League. And that's what he sees as the benchmark. So that to me is a very like under the radar, guys, if you want to be part of my team, get yourself to Europe, like Aronson has just done with from the Philadelphia Union to Salzburg, and take that path and follow the lead of McKennie, Adams, and others who came from MLS academies and have gone to have great careers. So obviously, Musa hasn't really gone down that traditional route. He's been with the England national teams and in a youth level, and Arsenal at youth level, and has now broken through at Valencia. But Andy, I mean, Musa, how important is it to lock him down? I asked Bill Harter about it after the game against Panama, and he was kind of non-committal, saying we'll wait until he decides and we'll answer any questions he had. But he's an absolute superstar, isn't he?
Yeah, the potential's there to be one. Obviously, you know, his numbers in La Liga are, we'll say, rough at the moment. He's a 17-year-old who's been thrust into a team that's got some of the worst financial, you know, hardships in the entire world of any club, and so they're desperate for anyone. And so he's going to take his lumps early on if he has the right mindset and the mentality to develop from it and to grow from those challenges and those shortcomings. Then it could be very, very good for him. The fact that he's playing as a semi-regular starter in La Liga at 17 years old. Just to add another player with a completely different skill set to the player pool, I think would be huge to lock him down and get him committed. And obviously the first chance to do that will be coming up in 2021, either World Cup qualifiers, Nations League, or the Gold Cup, whichever one ends up coming first. I don't think there's yet a date for when qualifying is going to start. So, I would imagine that based on the fact that he was willing to come into camp, having captained England at youth international levels, being eligible for Ghana, being eligible for Italy, the fact that he came into camp means Greg Berhalter has been on him for a while, and they have developed and grown a relationship where he feels very comfortable with him, that he was curious enough to say, I need to go see what the U.S. men's national team camp is about. I need to find out about that because that's something that highly interests me. I would imagine maybe it's a slight lean, like 51-49 or 52-48, but that would seem to indicate to me that's maybe where he wants to be and where he sees the best future for himself.
Nick, your thoughts on Musa?
I mean, I loved him. I'm not going to take credit for noticing this as much as seeing a tweet of highlights, but his ball movement of getting the ball in the midfield, turning and going upfield, I thought, I guess you'll call it as a shuttler, was really great. Here's my worry. I have not felt like he's coming at all. It'll be such a pleasant surprise for me. So it was great to hear Andy say that. And here's why. If you think that Weston McKennie and Gio Reyna, and let's not forget, a lot of these guys were getting together with young guys for the first time in a while, and it was almost like a summer camp. And so that was great for them. He has years of ties to Mason Greenwood and Harvey Elliott from the England youth setup. He spent a lot of time with Bukayo Saka in Arsenal before going to Valencia. And I wonder if Gareth Southgate calls up his old buddies and say, hey, tell Eunice I see a place for him. That's what I worry about, because I don't know that those buttons were really pressed until they saw him in a U.S. shirt. So I will be very skeptical about it.
But is there a place for him with England? It would be the question. Like, is there a legitimate place? If he's beyond what the coach says to him and really considers it, is there a place for him?
Yeah, it's 4 or 5 years away. That's the thing. Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the World Cup in 2022 or 2026?
Yeah, it's a big decision for him. But yeah, Southgate's already come out and said that England obviously want to keep him long term, and they hope that he selects them. But it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up, because he is a top talent. as you said, a few, naivety parts of his play really at times, but incredible.
Because he's 17.
Because he's 17. Let's not forget that. And like most of the US players there, we're judging them, but really they're, what were we doing when we were 18, 19, 17? Not playing for the US men's national team, I can tell you that. There are some negatives. We talked about a lot of positives, but there were a few negatives to come out of this camp. Nick, I'm going to ask you about the number 9 situation, because I know something you focused on, and also the centre-back depth. John Brooks is pretty much it, and that's it. Tim Ream, Miazga didn't really kind of elevate themselves at all into the conversation. And then you have Chris Richards after that, and then not really anybody else. Of course, Zimmerman in MLS and other players there could come into the fold. But what did you think about those two? What could be problem areas for the US?
So the number 9 thing, I can't really answer until I see Josh Sargent in a US shirt, because we haven't seen him as a number 9 for Bremen either. They ask him to press like heck. Sometimes he's even withdrawn a little bit as almost a midfielder. Florian Kohfeldt loves him and just wants to use him. So I just don't know if he's the center forward. We know Berhalter loves Gyasi Zardes. And frankly, if Gyasi Zardes plays over, which is crazy for me to say, Sebastian Leckett, they probably scored against Wales. So, and no, I really think so. But let me say this, the center back thing is the big question. Brooks is far and away the number 1. As someone who's watched and really grown into watching a lot more of the Bundesliga, this guy is one of the best long ball guys in the league coming out of the back over in Germany. He's an aerial threat. He is built to kind of intimidate in CONCACAF. I think it's almost about finding the right guy to play next to him. That's why maybe we've seen so much of Aaron Long, even though he's not a great passer, because Brooks can handle that. Walker Zimmerman seems to me maybe the best fit overall in terms of a similar player, but we're not growing center backs here yet. Chris Richards, maybe the best advice Greg Berhalter could have given him was, in January, see if you can go somewhere in 2 Bundesliga or a lower Bundesliga team and actually get some minutes. Because when he did play for Bayern, it was at right back, and his minutes right now are in 3 Liga. And that's not his fault. He's young. But I'd like to see him. Otherwise, you're in real danger of him falling into the Cameron Carter-Vickers trap.
And Nick, you've got some details right about December. There's a camp coming up. We think that Greg Berhalter sort of detailed and said he hopes to have a game. Do you got some details to share on that?
Yeah, I saw a report and then a couple follow-ups online about El Salvador coming to the United States. It'll be just their second game of 2020, and it'll be MLS heavy. The date rumored was a couple days before MLS Cup final. So, I mean, maybe some Liga MX guys, maybe Johnny Cardoso, but expect guys like Andy, Orlando City striker, Bright DK's brother, Daryl DK, yeah. Can they get Ayo Akinola to come in? Is Sebastian Saucedo going to be in? I think it'll be a lot of young guys from MLS, plus Jordan Morris, Walker Zimmerman, that type. So if that happens, you're seeing the 68th ranked team in the world coming stateside. It better be another win.
Oh, Bright DK, that just gives me a flashback to college playing against Notre Dame and getting,
what a big guy.
He was so good. He was so good. He thought he played really well, and then he just turned up and scored a hat trick, and then there you go. So that's what's coming up on the horizon for the US national team. Andy, quickly, I want to finish on this segment. Did this camp in November change your opinion about Berhalter, the ceiling for this team, and what we can expect for the 2022 World Cup?
It doesn't change my opinion of Berhalter, because my opinion of Berhalter was already pretty high. You can disagree with a coach's tactics or the system that he wants to play, or the decisions that he makes. But when you listen to him talk, you can listen to the reasoning and the thought process and say, okay, I disagree with the conclusion, but I see that there is a logical process that you took to get there. And I can respect that. And 2, I can see how that might work. It might not be the way that I would do it. I might disagree, but you're a reasonable adult as the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. And it's a bit of a shot at previous head coaches, of course, but we have a coach that's in charge that has a plan. And he's not deviating from it. He's got a lot of young players, and I think he's a pretty good coach to integrate a lot of those young players, because he did that quite a bit when he was at Columbus Crew. And he's shown that he can bring them into the fold now and get them to work together and play together and build together. And that's the biggest thing is, there's a lot of competition in the team, but listening to some of the press conferences that they had over the last week, there's a lot of love within that locker room as well. A lot of players who just really like each other and really want to play for each other. And they're competing for minutes, sure. But there's just a great feeling about the U.S. men's national team camp at the moment. And I think a lot of that credit goes to Berhalter. And as far as potential, it doesn't change because we don't know what the potential is, because it's a bunch of 17 and 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds running around in their first, single digit caps is what we're talking about for a lot of these players. So we're not going to know until probably midway through the next World Cup cycle, what the actual potential of this group is going to be. And if they get to this World Cup and have that experience and that growth in their careers, then I think we can talk about, okay, the potential has gone up.
Nick, you agree with that?
I do. This just popped into my head, so it might be insane, but I think about maybe 6-7 years ago when Belgium started emerging. Not that we're going to be at that level, but you saw pieces. You saw Kevin De Bruyne. You would hear about young guys coming through the ranks like Tielemans, and that's really come together for them. Yeah. I also think only one thing is, I think Berhalter's a great in-game coach. I really like him. I like him as a mentality leader for the club, or for the program, excuse me. But the shoehorning let get is the one thing that's going to kind of stick with me. The only MLS call up, a late call up, who has no center forward experience, when Tim Weah is right there. And that's my big question coming out of this. Tim Weah, who's played like 44 minutes over 7 appearances at Lille, was played 40 minutes both off the bench in these games. So what's the future for him? Because he looks like a center forward, and he wasn't started there twice.
No, definitely not. A lot of positivity, though, because my final thought on this topic is that 2 years ago, I went to Belgium, to Genk, to report on the US men's national team playing a friendly against Italy. They lost 1-0. It's the last game in charge for interim coach Dave Sarachan. It was miserable. There was no plan. The players were frustrated afterwards, spoke to Pulisic and other players in the tunnel area. It was cold. It was damp. It was not a good performance against England and Italy, and lost both those games. And there was no clear direction and hope, really. But now I see generally US men's national team fans, they understand Wales and Panama are under strength, but they are genuinely excited about watching their team play again. And they can see a clear philosophy and plan, and young players getting minutes in Europe buying into that. So famous last words, but the US men's national team seem to be heading in the right direction. That is for sure. Focus on one of the other big news topic now, changing gears to the Premier League. Liverpool do not appear to be heading in the right direction with injuries. A lot of injury problems cropping up again. Joe Gomez suffered a serious knee injury for England in training over the international break. So he joins Virgil van Dijk on the long-term treatment room table. So those two are out. They're 2 starting centre-backs. Jordan Henderson went down with a small injury. Trent Alexander-Arnold got injured. Robertson was struggling. So that's Liverpool's entire defensive line are either out long-term or is battling through injuries right now. And then their captain who sits in front of them as well. So, Nick, I mean, these defensive issues do not seem to be slowing down for Liverpool at all. How big of an issue is this for them in their Premier League title defense?
I mean, it's big, but still mostly just because of Van Dijk. And yeah. I don't want to get too crazy, but one of the things that Jurgen Klopp has done, which he has clearly rectified from when he was at Dortmund, he's brought in younger guys before he sold the older guys. He's developed them. Some of his academy guys look ready to contribute. And my big question, I mean, I think it's probably for you guys as well, as we look at Leicester, Brighton, Wolves, and Fulham still before a big matchup with Spurs, is this. Look, they're going to have Mohamed Salah, is one of the best players in the world. They're going to have Sadio Mane. He's not too far off that level. Joe Gomez, when we talk about him being missing, how many top 6 teams does he even start for? Because I think we're talking more about, again, not replacing Dejan Lovren in the transfer market than we are talking about how important Joe Gomez is.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, if Klopp was angry before the break about these injuries and sort of he was apoplectic with rage about scheduling, not having 5 subs, I mean, he's going to be fuming, isn't he, to be honest, the next time he speaks to the media about all of this. But does he have to keep the mood positive is it important that it doesn't get too negative to kind of, there's guys who are going to be stepping in, Matty, Phillips, and others coming in who really, they need to step up, right? And make the most of this opportunity. I mean, how quickly can things unravel after a few injuries for these big clubs?
Yeah, I think publicly and what he says to the press will be very negative, like you say. But internally, I do think it'll be, all sunshine and rainbows and happy bunnies hopping around and trying to keep that good feeling, within the club, because for everything that they've been through so far this season, they have been through a lot. And I know it's early, it's only 8 games. They're a point back off of the top spot at the moment. And so they have managed up until this point, with Van Dijk going down, they've managed to keep right where they need to be, right in pace with the title race. So obviously the confidence is going to be there. And I like what Nick brought up there, the fact that at Dortmund, he was known as someone who brought through a lot of young academy players. He's not had to do that, or he's not really been able to do that, I guess I would say, at Liverpool, because the expectation for the most of the time that he's been there is we're going to win now. We're not looking to develop and sell on kind of the model that is at Dortmund. They want to win, of course, but it's always going to be about the players that you can bring through in the team. And they're willing to sacrifice a handful of points if you can bring through a player that's going to be worth $100 million when they sell him in a couple of years. That's not the case at Liverpool, and certainly not in a title defense after winning it for the first time in 30 years. So the pressure is going to be a little bit different, and maybe, and I know this might be hard for Liverpool fans because they're Liverpool fans, but they might have to temper expectations just a little bit. They're not going to walk to the title the way that they did last year. I don't think they thought that coming into the season, but certainly now. And so I just wonder, what is he going to do? What tactically is he going to come up with? Because he's always kind of on the cutting edge with the tactical ideas. And 0-7-3, no defenders, go all out, a million miles an hour press, keep everybody right there on the halfway line so that they can't run in behind, a couple defenders just on their half of the field, and just try to squeeze teams to death and win the ball. They don't have center backs. They don't have fullbacks at the moment. The fullbacks are what we talk about with this team that are just so exceptional. They're both out.
Yeah. So with Gomez out now for a long time, for me, that kind of, again, shifts the title talk, because before, with Van Dijk's injury, it swung into Man City's favour. And then when they drew 1-1 at Man City, it kind of swung back into Liverpool's favour. But now with Gomez out, Matip hasn't looked great, and you got a youngster coming alongside. And maybe Fabinho, he could be back fit, which would be a big boost. But then you lose him from midfield as well. So for me, I think this kind of just pushes Man City back to being the slight favourites to win the title, because they have Ruben Diaz and Laporte. Number one, they're healthy and they're fit. And number two, they're playing well and developing a good partnership. And just like last season, when City lost Laporte, their title bid unravelled pretty quickly. So now that Liverpool have lost their 2 starting centre-backs, let's see what happens. And they are nursing a lot of injuries as well. So obviously focusing on some of the other injury news to wrap up around the Premier League. Had some, during the international window, we've talked about this in the past, the kind of complexities of travelling all around the world at the moment during the pandemic. Mohamed Salah tested positive. Mohamed Al-Nene as well tested positive for COVID while on international duty with Egypt. Luis Suarez, obviously Atletico Madrid, but he tested positive at Uruguay. There's been certain outbreaks in the Republic of Ireland team with Matt Doherty. At South Korea, a few issues there as well. So a lot of there's going to be some really interesting international injury news updates when we get towards the end of the week. And I'm not sure a lot of Premier League managers will know who they can pick right now. But I do want to say that we focus on Liverpool here, but a lot of Premier League teams have been hit by these injuries quite severely early in the season. Leicester City, Crystal Palace, they've done okay. Arsenal, Man City, I mean, they're just starting to get a lot of their players back. So with the European action in Europa League and Champions League, you are seeing that build-up of games impact those top 6, 7, 8 teams in the Premier League. So, lads, I mean, I don't know what you think about the international window to wrap up this segment, but it seems like some serious considerations going to have to go on between now and March as to whether players are released for these friendlies. Yeah,
you said complexities of traveling for international right now. The stupidity of traveling for international games right now, I think, is maybe the more apt
especially
phrase.
Friendlies as well.
Well, in some instances, yes.
Yeah.
But some of these games have to be played because they're qualifiers for the European Championships, their Nations League. I guess you don't have to play the Nations League, but the model that has worked, and Champions League and Europa League proved it, is you get the teams together in a single location, you have some protocols in place, and then you play the games at that single location. Now, there's no reason that these Nations League groups, the final 2 or 3 games, 4 teams into one place, 2 games on the same day or back-to-back days, what have you, you can knock that out at the end of the season in relatively short order before we get to the European Championships and everything. So I understand why they're doing it. They've got games they've got to fulfill and have results, but this is just not the time for it. And every time they go away, there's an explosion of players that are testing positive right now. And it's predictable as well. That's the thing is you can see it coming.
But the international break is now over and we're back into domestic action. So let's kind of take a breather and let's see, how things can shake out from now on here, because it's going to get simpler now for the most part. Previewing week 9 in the Premier League, then the Premier League action is finally back over at Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com. We'll have you covered with team news, previews, stream links, where to watch all of these games across the USA. I'm going to start by focusing on a big game in North London. Tottenham against Manchester City, Pep Guardiola against Jose Mourinho, Kane and Son against Laporte and Diaz. This is a beauty, I think, to kind of really see, are Tottenham the legit title contenders we think they might be this season? And Man City, can they kind of build off that draw against Liverpool where they probably just edged it and they probably should have won with some of the chances they missed? Are they firmly back on track now? And again, we're talking about international players coming back from here, there and everywhere, busy international periods, but I'm looking forward to this game purely because Mourinho and Guardiola, these battles, these clashes of styles have been really good to watch at United and City in recent seasons. And now, obviously, Mourinho got one over Guardiola last season when he first turned up at Tottenham. So let's see if Spurs can kick on. I think for me, if I'm a Tottenham fan watching this, this is the real big test. If you win this game, then all of a sudden, all that early season hope can start building into something a bit more tangible. So, Nick, any thoughts on that? And I know you're looking forward to Liverpool, Leicester, and again, 2, I guess, title contenders, right? Can we call them that?
I think we have to. My only thought on Man City and Spurs is that I hope that Man City scores early, not because I want them to win, but the other way around, or the longer it goes scoreless, the less we have to see some world-class players operate. But I think Mourinho will attack a little bit, and I think Pep might want to be a little bit more defensive. Liverpool, Leicester, this has a chance to really buoy Liverpool. I'll tell you why. They can feel invincible again if they win, given what they've gone through. They're at home. It's been a fortress for them. I'm very, very interested to see if Mohamed Salah is able to go, because when he's there, anything's possible. That said, if there's one almost team that I want to call them that will be buoyed by this break, it's Leicester. James Maddison not called up. Jamie Vardy not in the England setup. Harvey Barnes. They had 0 stress weeks. As long as Wesley Fofana's knee is fine, he was rested as well. Yuri Tillmans and Cengiz Under were very good. They're bringing momentum back. So this could be a beauty, but it's also where the distinct lack of Wilfred Ndidi might rear its head. And that is the biggest X factor for me, even more so than what's going on with Liverpool.
True. And then Vardy obviously will be looking to make the most of those defensive injuries for Liverpool, right? Getting behind and really catch them out like he seems to do all the time against Liverpool. I mean, Jurgen Klopp must be sick of the sight of him wheeling away in celebration over the years. And Andy, another game you want to focus on is Leeds United against Arsenal. This should be a really good one for people who love to see the game played correctly in terms of Leeds. For Arsenal, we usually say that, but not so much anymore, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked when you put a bottom half of the table battle here in the games that we had to it's just jokes, Arsenal fans. It's just jokes. But seriously, who's ready to watch one of the most expensive clubs in the world try to grind out a 1-0 victory against a newly promoted team? Because that's what Arsenal are going to try to do in this game against Leeds. And Leeds are going to be the ones that are taking the game to Arsenal in this one, which seems so incredibly backwards given the players in the two teams. And that's not to say that Mikel Arteta doesn't have the right idea going forward. I think that he is building something, and foundationally, a solid defense and a solid midfield is going to give him the platform to, I think, reach what he wants to reach in his time at Arsenal. But this has definitely got upset potential. I guess you would have to define which team you would label the favorite to make it an upset, but I could absolutely see Leeds taking all 3 points in this game and just really looking just so bright and shining against Arsenal.
There you go. Match week 9, the Premier League's coming up. Good to have it back. Plenty of other games to keep an eye on as well. Wolves, Saints, United, West Brom, Newcastle, Chelsea. We'll have you covered on Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com. Everything you need around those games, analysis, news, and everything else in between. Gents, also for me to say is thanks for joining me for Pro Soccer Talk this week, and enjoy the games. Cheers.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and always join us every weekend at 7 a.m. on NBCSN for Premier League mornings. Plus, make sure you subscribe to Peacock Premium as well, where you can watch exclusively live 175 games and same-day on-demand replays of all 380 Premier League matches as well.